Welcome back. Vauxhall owner Stellantis has announced plans next April to shut its van-making factory in Luton, putting more than 1,100 jobs at risk. Amidst rumours Labour is rethinking its electrical vehicle policy, Stellantis blamed the quotas that force electric vehicles to make up at least 22% of manufacturers' sales and charges penalties of up to £15,000 per vehicle for its decision to close the factory. Well, I'm joined now by motor journalist Quentin Wilson, as well as my panel, Shadow Defense Minister Mark Fris, and the author and journalist Michael Crick. Quentin, thank you very much for coming in to join us. Everybody is now beginning to realise that this headlong rush to get rid of petrol and diesel cars is going to cost thousands of jobs, not just here, but in Europe as well. And people are beginning to pull back from it, aren't they?
Well, Luton, they export 70%, over 70% of their vans to other countries. So it's not just EVs, it's the global situation. We've got declining markets in Germany, we've got declining markets in France. So, you know, a lot of those are diesel vans, not electric. So you can't blame closing Luton on EVs.
It's the fine of £15,000 that makes the balance of profitability on petrol and diesel cars.
But in reality, nobody's going to be fined this year. And I completely agree. You should not be taking money away from car manufacturers that they could spend on R&D and development. That money should come back to them. It's completely wrong-headed.
And the Germans are getting very fed up with this too and are putting pressure on the EU to change the programme. And if that happens, then, of course, the export opportunities begin to reopen up.
Well, the German economy, as you know, Jacob, is not doing well at all.
It's not doing well.
No, but you've got companies like Mercedes and BMW who are doing very well with electric cars. But you've got some companies like Ford and Nissan who didn't make the right model decisions, didn't plan ahead, their management was not right, and they find themselves without products to sell.
But isn't the whole idea of the £15,000 petrol car tax one that goes against consumer choice? That people would buy electric cars if they really wanted to, and some people are, but that if you have to have a massive tax to push people away from petrol and diesel cars, there's something wrong with the way policy is developing.
That policy of the £15,000 is, as I've said, completely wrong. And we should make sure that money stays in the UK and we don't pay, for instance, Tesla for credits and things like that. We need the money here. It should not go abroad. But you also need incentives. We need to help consumers who have got no help at all to buy electric cars. And that Z mandate is very important because it means that you get lots of second-hand cars coming into the market, electric cars, and that means they become more affordable. If you take those mandates away, Jacob, they will just carry on always making diesel and petrol cars. And it's mandates like that stop us having lead in petrol and things like that. You do need a nudge to the market.
But would you buy a second-hand electric car?
Yeah, I have.
OK, he's very brave. Mark, isn't this all our fault? We introduced this stupid policy and then Rishi rolled back on it a little, but nothing like enough.
Jacob, I think it's a much broader question than just these EV regulations. And this is very tough news for the people of Luton. But this is a disinvestment in the United Kingdom by Stellantis. If you go back to a week into the general election, Rachel Reeves gave this big speech about what would be the economic policy of an incoming Labour government. She famously said, I looked it up the other day, that all their plans would be fully costed and fully funded. And then she said a few minutes later, so there was no need for tax rises under a Labour government. She has a budget. She puts them up by 40 billion. She was criticised at the CBI for doing that. What international investors want more than anything is stability. They want to know that if they invest X, they can reasonably calculate a return of Y. And unfortunately, Labour's policies are so anti-business, you are starting to see big companies being disinclined to invest in the United Kingdom. And I fear, though I don't welcome it, we're going to see a lot more of this, EV regulations notwithstanding.
Michael?
Well, I agree with Quentin. We need the incentive, the nudge and the carrot regime is clearly wrong and it needs to be rethought. But, you know, we shouldn't just sort of abandon the idea of having electric cars or electric vans. That is the future. We've got to stick to our goals when it comes to and these are government policy and they were your government policy. You two may not agree with them, but we've got to stick with our
Well, I think they're terrible policies because the pigeons...
I mean, I'm not even sure you think that global warming is a problem or does it exist, do you?
Oh, I don't deny that it exists.
Right.
I just
and do you
don't
not think we should do something about it?
No, because we don't make a blind bit of difference.
Well, that is a bit of... I mean, you could say that about all sorts of things in life.
You could, yes.
And
it's
you
very
just leave
sensible.
it to somebody else.
It's a very
but
sensible
actually,
view
the
to take.
Chinese are doing rather well when it comes to tackling global warming.
Not really.
And they're doing
Their
very
emissions
well
are
when it
going
comes
up
to
and up.
building electric cars.
They are,
we should be ashamed of yourself that you want to...
Because by getting rid of petrol and diesel cars, we're handing over business to the Chinese. I don't want to do that.
But if we don't do this and do the Z mandate and make these cars and build the factories here, then the Chinese will simply take us over. It's an industrial
Or we could just carry on with petrol cars.
But then,
Which would be easier
but then
and nicer.
It's a sunset industry. Jacob, you're ideologically opposed to electric cars. We know this, but if you look at the industrial picture, the rest of the world is converting. If we just dig our...
Well, not necessarily America with Trump.
Well, yes, that's...
Yeah.
If I may, look, it's
All right, we're going to go on because this is more about drill, baby, drill. Before the break, I want to ask my panel about a new report which has suggested the oil field under the Falklands Islands contains nearly 1 billion barrels of oil, a real investment opportunity for this Labour government. Back to my panel. This is worth £55 billion potentially. This is wonderful, isn't it?
It's absolutely fantastic. And this would be a great resource. And providing Ed Miliband can get over it and doesn't try and impose any sort of restrictions on the Falkland Islands government, we spend a lot of money, quite rightly, defending the Falkland Islands. It would be great if we could use some of this, that oil wealth, to relieve the pressure on the defence budget so that the Falklands pay more towards their own defence. There are lots and lots of potential advantages in this, and I cannot see any downsides. We should drill, baby, drill around the Falklands.
This is really exciting, isn't it, Michael? It's similar in size to the North Sea.
And, I mean, I know the Falkland Islands have their independence when it comes to decisions like this, but we do have a say when it comes to their foreign policy and their defence policy. And if I was the government, I would invite the First Minister of the Falkland Islands, or whoever it is the boss these days, over to here to sort this out. We can't just restrict the way in which we rely on carbon and allow the Falkland Islands to drill more of it out of the ground than ever, particularly for an island when you think that the first people that are going to suffer from global warming in terms of states are going to be island states. Now, not the Falklands. The Falklands are quite hilly.
It would be wonderful for the Falklands if we got a bit warmer.
Wait a minute. Look, we're an island.
Yeah.
Look,
well, we should have some sympathy with those islands around the world who, within our lifetimes, are going to cease to exist because of global warming.
You mentioned China earlier.
Yeah.
China is responsible for almost a third of total global emissions. And by the way, they're still opening one coal-fired power station a month, right? The UK is responsible for approximately 1%.
Well, you can't just say the big countries can deal with it and us little ones, we're going to ignore it. That is morally irresponsible.
Michael, with respect, I didn't say that. I didn't get a chance to say anything because you talked all over me. Let me say what I want to say.
Go on then.
That doesn't mean because we're only responsible for 1%, we shouldn't make an effort. But it's a global problem. And so you've got to get the major emitters like China and India and the US and Brazil to do something more muscular about it. Even if we all went back to living in caves tomorrow, and I think that's what some people would like, it wouldn't scratch the damage that China is doing day in, day out. So we just have to have a proportionate way of dealing with this and allowing the Falklands to use oil. We're an island. We've used oil for decades. Doesn't mean that the planet is finished. We've just got to be realistic about it.
Well, the Falklands doesn't need an oil industry. The Falklands the economy is doing extremely well. Their GDP per head is almost twice what it is. And they're the 10th richest country in the world in terms of GDP per head.
There aren't many people to spread the calculation across, are there?
Well, are you saying that if the Falklands extract all this oil, then we don't need to extract from the North Sea anymore? It's not going to come here.
Whose oil would you rather have, the Falklands oil or Middle Eastern oil?
I would prefer to... I think we need to reduce our reliance on oil all round, the Falkland Islands and us, and we need to... program it so that we extract it from the ground.
Right, you ring up Xi, you get him to promise you, Michael Crick, as a committed, as someone who feels strongly about this, that he's going to stop building coal-fired power stations, and then we'll come back on and we'll have a chat about oil drilling. But in the meantime, if people want to save the planet, they want to go and protest outside the Chinese embassy.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the fact
and
of it.
in the meantime, they should pick up a penguin and drill, baby, drill. Thank you to my panel. After the break, for this evening's denouement, French word, you know, you will find out why the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has blamed the Church of England for the obesity crisis.